Hey look, it's back. We're going to do a little work on the Latrax Rally car today, guys, in our quick drive series. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do 2 parts today. Usually I do 1, I know, but I'm going to show you guys 2 parts because they kind of go together. And it is the shock absorber set and the shock towers. So these are pretty easy to install. Actually, there's a little bit of work involved here, but as far as the shock towers go, I mean, it's just unbolting the old ones, putting the new ones on. With the shocks here, these are really nice. These are aluminum as well. They come with the oil, and all you have to do is fill the oil up and then pop them onto the car. So let's head over to the workbench. Let's get these parts swapped out, and we'll go out for a quick drive to see how the handling does after we swap these parts out. All right, I'm all set up over here at the workbench, and you're probably saying, Craig, why do I need to switch the shocks out on my Latrax Rally car? They have some pretty good shocks on there. And you know what? For the price, these things work just fine, but they're friction dampers. They don't have oil to, really damp the suspension. And you know what? The aftermarket shocks, they're just much more tunable. So as you grow into this vehicle, you're probably gonna want some better handling, and these new shocks are going to allow that to happen. Now for the shock towers, it's kind of just a durability thing. The stock shock towers are actually pretty firm, so these are going to be much more durable, and they're going to provide a more solid mount for the shock. So if you're looking for a little bit more precision out of such a micro machine, this may help out a little bit. But these are pretty neat. These are labeled with front and rear, really nice machined aluminum parts here. Let me see if I can get in there nice and close for you guys. And as you can see, it still has the 3 holes, so you can go and tune the position of your shock. Now to swap these out, it's really, really simple. All you gotta do is take that Phillips screwdriver that you probably have for this machine already, remove the 2 screws from the shock towers, and then if you're swapping the shocks out like me, you're gonna remove the screws on the bottom of the shocks, and they'll just come out as one piece, and you're going to reuse the screws for the new shock towers. Now, if you're just doing shock towers by themselves, obviously you just want to remove the 2 shock tower screws and the 2 screws on the top of the stock shocks and swap out the tower. So let me get on that. Let me get this swapped out real quick, and we're going to work on the shocks next. Well, there's the stock shock towers and shocks. Not going to need these things anymore. We've got the new towers already installed, and I think it took me all of like 2 minutes to do. So that is a really easy upgrade for your vehicle. Now it's time to move on to these shocks. And these are really just nicely packaged in some foam here, and they are a great looking shock. Can't wait to show you guys these things. Check that out. That is an awesome mini aluminum damper there. Threaded shock body. It's all aluminum. Well, the cap and the bottom are plastic, but the body itself, the lower cap, the shock perch, all aluminum. And it's just a neat shock overall. This is going to look really good on the car, and I'm sure it's going to improve the performance. So what I'm going to start off by doing is removing the lower perch, and then the spring, and that's just going to allow me to grab the body easier. So I go and take the shock cap off. Wow, that was on there pretty tight. So just got to pull that off. And there's actually a little rubber bladder under there, so you got to pull that off. And as you can see, it's empty from the factory. That's why they give you this oil in here. And it says it's a 30 weight oil on the bottle. I'm going to start off with it, see how it works. And I was thinking it might need something a little bit heavier, like a 40 or a 50 or something, but I'm sure this is a great starting point. So they actually give you a little dropper too, so you got to go install that on the bottle. So I'm going to do that in a second. One other thing I wanted to show you. So now instead of having shoulder screws to hold the shocks on, they give these little ball ends, and you're going to need to install those in the arms and on the shock towers as well. So now let me show you how easy it is to put oil in these things. Let's get these shocks filled with oil. Now, as you can see, I have the shock shaft all the way down. I'm going to take the oil, and I'm going to put a bunch of drops in there, actually, and almost fill it to the top, basically. And once it's near the top, I'm going to take the shock shaft and start cycling it up and down, and that's going to get out any air that was underneath. You can see the air coming up there. You can go and tap it on the side, and that should help get a lot of the air out. Once you get all the air out, you come back and you just go and top off the shock body here with oil. There we go. So it's still a little concave on the top, and actually I'm going to go push the shock shaft up just a little bit. Now I'm going to take my cap. I've already got the bladder back in the cap. Just going to put it back on here. Make sure you don't cross thread it as you're screwing it back on. Crank that down nice and tight, and now you got to check to make sure that you don't have any hydrolock. And as you can see, this shock shaft isn't going all the way up, so there's still too much oil in this. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to back it out pretty much all the way with this. I'm going to push that shock shaft up, just back it off, because I'm going to let some of that oil seep out. Put it back on, crank it back down. And you can see some of that oil, extra oil seeping out already. And just check it again. Almost there. I gotta do one more time on this. It's a slow process, but you'll get it. Crank back down. You can see there's even more oil there now. And there, the shock shaft goes all the way up. Actually, with this shock, you'll see a little bit of shaft exposed, but it is going up all the way. And that extra shaft space will be taken up by this shock perch. But once that's done, you go and wipe off the cap. Get all that oil off there so no dirt attracts to it. And once that's wiped up, you gotta take your spring, slide that on. Take the lower shock perch, slide that on. And now that shock is ready to go. Now you just gotta build 3 more. With the shocks together, all we have to do now is install these little ball ends, and this is what the shock is going to snap onto and secure to the tower and arm with. So, you know, basically just screw them in where the stock shock was. That's the best starting place. And then, of course, if you need to go and tune your vehicle, you know, the suspension later on, you could try the other holes as well. So once we get those on, now you take your shocks. And actually, I went ahead and I adjusted the collar here, this preload collar, and I moved it down to about halfway. That's probably a good starting point. You're going to want to check your ride height to make sure it is where it needs to be afterwards, and use those collars to adjust your ride height. So you just go and snap these on, and you might need a pair of pliers actually. All right, so there's my pair of pliers. Just going to go and snap the top on, flip it over. Now I'm going to snap the bottom one on. Just kind of pop it over in place. There we go. That looks very cool. Check that out. Feels really good, nice and smooth. Now I just got to do 3 more. And there we have it. All the shocks are on. Looks very cool. The shock towers look awesome as well. And I think this is going to make this vehicle handle a lot better. It's definitely going to give me a lot more tuning now that I could go and swap out the oils. And the oils feel pretty good for right out of the box with that kit oil. I probably wanted to go to 40 or 50, but this is a great starting point for now. It does feel really good. So now that just leaves driving it and having some fun with it. And that's my favorite part of the Quick Drive series, is going out and seeing what these things could do. Wonder if you guys could notice a difference if you've been following the series. If you see a difference in handling, tell me in the comments below. Now let's go drive it.